My name is Daniel Hindrikes. I'm a developer and architect, mostly focused on mobile and some cloud solutions. Working for a Swedish company called 1337 and are based in Borlänge. I'm co-author of the book WinForms projects that we have released in 2 editions, where you can start learning WinForms from the start and build pretty advanced projects in it. I used to do some live streaming on Twitch, have done a lot of them in spring, focus on Blazor and mobile stuff. I will continue to do that now in December. I had a little bit of pause, so maybe not have seen the streams recently, but I will start with that again. I'm also an organizer of the conference .NET Frontend Day that we will host in February this year. It's a virtual conference, so if you're interested in that, you can go to .NET-frontend.net. Okay, let's start talk about Blazor. So mobile apps using Blazor. Isn't Blazor for the web? Yeah, it is, but with the release of .NET 6 and the release of .NET MAUI, we will have a third option of how we can use Blazor. So Blazor for web will look like this. Yeah, and it will also look like this in the app because the UI will be web content. So, but this session is not about how you can use a PWA, progressive web app. It's about how you can use a native app, because PWA, as you can have used earlier, for example, with mobile Blazor binding, you have that option in the template. This is not a web application. It will not run on the web. So it will be part of .NET MAUI, but what is .NET MAUI? .NET MAUI is an acronym for .NET Multi-Platform Application UI. And we can say that that is the evolution of WinForms. In some way, it is WinForms 6, but there are a lot of big changes. How the architecture is built up, they replace all the render layer with a new handler layer, and there are also some other important changes that make it possible to add better performance to WinForms, but it also will make WinForms more extensible. And MAUI will be released Q2 during 2022, but they have not said an exact date. But they also have told us that we don't have to wait for build. That will be probably in May. So they will release it when they are ready. And that's also probably the release date for Visual Studio for Mac. I don't have heard anything about that, but Visual Studio for Mac 2022 is still in preview. So my guess is that it will be released at the same time. So this Blazor desktop or Blazor hybrid or Blazor native, you may have heard a lot of different names of that. It started as an experimental project from Microsoft/Xamarin, and that project was called Mobile Blazor Bindings. That project is still alive, and what that project did is that they took the Blazor programming model and Blazor syntax, and they made it possible to use that for building some WinForms apps. But one part of this was the Blazor webview, where you can use your Blazor content inside of that. But mobile Blazor bindings could look like this. It's not that unfamiliar. If you have used some WinForms, you have contents used, you have stack layouts. Yeah. But this is not what we will talk about today, but it can be a little bit interesting to know where this mobile the Blazor desktop. Maybe they should call it Blazor app, or because I think naming is a bit confusing when they sometimes talk about Blazor desktop and they talk about Blazor hybrid. But what is this? We can see this as an Electron for .NET. I mean, we use Electron, or not we, but JavaScript developers use Electron for bringing their web content to native apps. So what you can do is that you can combine a native UI with web UI. You can use it in WinForms, .NET MAUI, WinForms, EPF. And the C# code is running inside of the native process. So it's not running on a server like Blazor server, it's not running in WebAssembly, it's running inside of the native process. The only thing that are web in this is the actual UI. Everything else is 100% native, and that means that you have 100% access to the APIs that every platform offers for you. For example, with iOS, you can use all iOS stuff from C#. And the component you use is the Blazor WebView. It uses the platform's WebView, so it's not, it will not ship the WebView as Electron do with the Chromium stuff. So the footprint will be much more less compared to Electron when you're using a Blazor app, Blazor hybrid desktop app, blah, 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 blah. And some of the great things with this is that you can share a lot of code or all of your code from your existing web app. And you can add some native cool stuff to it. This also means that you can use all third-party components that you're using, maybe from Syncfusion or Telerik or whatever. So all components will work. And it's also for mobile. It's not just for desktop, even if that's what Microsoft mostly have talked about when they talk about this Blazor hybrid desktop native stuff. So how you can use this is that you, inside of your app, using this Blazor WebView. In .NET MAUI, the Blazor WebView is just a regular control, and that means that you can use it for your whole app. You can have it just like an item in collection view or stack layout. So you can decide how you want to use it. And I think that will be really great. Maybe you just have some cool graph libraries that you want to use inside your app, but that is not available as .NET MAUI. Then you can go there and use just that part of the screen for your app. Okay, let's show some code. Start here on my demo project I have built for Mac. So we can see here that I have 3 projects in my solution explorer. We have the what I call code blogger. That is the .NET MAUI project, where we have all platforms in this platform folder. We have Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, and Windows. And Mac Catalyst is what .NET MAUI are using for building Mac apps. Mac Catalyst is a wrapper, so you can use the iOS APIs for Mac apps. So you can say Mac Catalyst is what Apple have for taking iOS apps and run them natively on Mac. It's not the same as you can do on a Mac M1 with the ARM processor, that you can take your iOS and just run it. This is not the same thing. That is still an iOS app, but here will be compiled to a Mac app. So what you can see here, that this is maybe familiar if you have used Xamarin Forms, but big difference here is that you have this MAUI program. This is the entry point of the app, and it's very similar to .NET Core app, for example, where you have your app builder. In this case, you have a MAUI app builder. And this will be the same steps even if you building a MAUI app or if you're building a MAUI Blazor app. So the only thing you need to do here is to add this add Blazor WebView, and that makes it possible to use the WebView inside of the .NET MAUI app. So let's go to my main page here. Here, this is a shell, and the shell in this case have a tab bar that makes that we have native rendered tabs, and they yes, of course. So here we have the tab bar, and then we have shell content inside it, and if shell content is inside of tab bar, it will render a tab, and they will look like how they will do on the platform. So if we run this Mac app, for example, we'll look what tabs will do on the Mac Catalyst app. I will run the demo only on Mac now because it's much faster to start and compared to if we should build it for iOS, for example. Some time today. Okay, started. Yes, here it is. So here we have the tabs. Not the most beautiful app yet, but I'm working on it. So here you can see how I will show you how I did this. But this is the Monaco editor that is a Blazor component. So in case I can, this is configured to use Markdown. So I can edit So this Monaco editor is not available for .NET MAUI, and that's the reason here I used Blazor. So hopefully this will be the blog engine for my new blog that I'm working on. Okay, but let's go and see how this looks. So here we have the content page. We can have this in separate files if we want to. In many cases that is preferable. But here we have the Blazor web view. We have a host page that is this index.html, and then we will specify the root component and where in the index.html we will add it. So in this case in app section, and the component is the editor components from my component library here. So here I have that. Pages, editor. Here we have some styling. Have the Monaco editor. This is everything here is web content, and if you have done Blazor development, you are very familiar with this. You can also see here in the MAUI project we have a www root folder file. It's the part that will be replaced by the Blazor component. And if we want to, we can have in main component that we are loading, we can have, for example, a router, so we can navigate inside of the Blazor stuff. Also, I can show you another I'm working with, where I have that. This project is something I started up to do visualization about service buses. I have not completed it yet, but I started that as a WebAssembly application because I don't want to host a server for it. But the problem with WebAssembly is that it is running inside of Sandbox, and the NuGet package from Microsoft for working with service bus was not supporting running WebAssembly, so I decided to make an app of it instead. But this will be completely web UI. So if you go to main.razor here, for example, we can see that we have a router exactly as we have with a full regular Blazor site. In this case, the whole site will be running inside of Blazor, but it will run natively. It will have access to native APIs. For example, here in the secure connection service, I'm using secure storage from MAUI Essential. That is the MAUI version of Xamarin Essential, if you have used that. So this was on Mac and iOS, this will store the connection strings in the keychain. That is something you cannot do from web, for example. So that is using the native capabilities. So here can you see that this app are using a library that have a fluent UI. So you can build with the Blazor and MAUI an app that looks like a native Windows apps in this case. So maybe it's a bit strange to run it on a Mac here, but it will look exactly the same if you run it WinUI also. Package is called. It's called Microsoft Fast Component on Blazor component that makes it possible to use Fluent UI in Blazor sites. The documentation is not that good, but there are sample projects so you can figure out how to use it. Okay, so you can use your Blazor stuff in .NET app, and of course, can run the same shared code even in. So this. So as I said, beginning, if you want to use your web content, for example, if your product owner comes and say, okay, we need a app of this, take your website and maybe do some modifications and reuse bits, but right if you want to. But let's try to run this web page instead. Now we're back to the code blogger project with the Monaco editor. This will just take a few minutes. Here it is. So here you can see we have the Monaco editor. So Markdown, but we still have a web menu that's default from project template here. So in this case, I have used my Blazor content, my Blazor component, and I have different navigation for different type of platforms. The app will have the native navigation experience, but the web will still have web navigation experience, but I can reuse all important or the main functionality of that code I can reuse. Another feature that are different between those applications is that if I'm using on a web, I maybe don't have access file system, at least I don't have access read and write exactly as I have with a native app. I can use the forms to upload files and things like that. I can download files from the web, but I cannot work with a file system. For a native app, I can do that. So then if we have a native app, we can extend the experience for the users and add those good parts that we can have for a native app. For example, in this post service for the app, I file system watcher. For example, if I save this markdown file and I open Visual Studio Code and edit it, we can listen to the changes to the files. On the page where we have the drafts, we can list all the files that are in that folder. That is possible to do in the app. So if you go to the web app instead, I'm just saving the drafts in storage. So it will be possible to save them there, but you cannot work with them outside of the web browser as you can with the native app. And some users maybe prefer to work with, in this case, the blog post in the app, and some of them maybe want to use Visual Studio Code. Now the the editor experience will be the same because Visual Studio Code is also using the Monaco editor, but yeah, we want to use it. So in this case, I have those platform projects, or what you call them, the web and the app projects, and then I have the shared project, and I have all my shared Blazor components in here, the editor, some models, and I also have, in this case, the post service. So I have the interface here that with a method that will work on all platforms, and I also have some base stuff to reuse some code that I can use both on the app and the web. And then I just figure that in the app builder.services, and then I register the post service. So this is the only thing I need to do, have those different experience on native application and on the web application. But this Blazor WebView, you can not only use that on .NET MAUI apps, you can use it, for example, in WinForms and BPF. So this can be a way for you to start modernize your old WinForms application, for example, instead of just replacing them completely with a Blazor website, for example. You can start building that and take those parts inside of your app instead. And in the end, you maybe will replace the whole app, maybe with just a website or with a .NET MAUI app. But you can do that page by page or on. Should not update parallels live here now. So here I will show you the application that you may have seen, because this is the one that was shown during the .NET Conf. So here we have a WinForms app in this case, and one important part when you're doing a WinForms project, because there are no project templates for this right now, and I had a lot of struggling with this in my own project, because I added some Razor files and that I had a lot of compiling errors. I could not use them. But instead of just having like default value here, Microsoft.NET.SDK, you need to add Razor in the end. That is important. So this is a WinForms app running on .NET 6 Windows framework, and we have used WinForms here. We have implicit usings that we can use if we want to. And inside of our WinForms project, we have this www root folder with the index.html, exactly as we have with the MAUI app. See here with the packages that we have a reference to Microsoft ASP.NET Core components.webview. And this is the important package that we need to have here when we are running a Blazor WebView. This one is just a component library, so we don't care about that. If you go to designer here, we can see that he has built up native UI, but here in this tab, we have nothing. And we can see here also in the document outline that there are no content in tab page 2. But if we go behind or CS file for this view, we can see here that we are creating a Blazor WebView. Say it will fill available area. Host page is the index.html file, but we also need to provide it with a service collection. So we will do that by creating a new service collection, and then we need to call add Blazor WebView. And if we want to, we can register other services. For example, here also, if I should use this in a code blogger, I will register the post service interface here to this service collection. And what we also need to do is that we need to point out component to use. So we will do that by adding this brick analysis to the components. as we did with the SAML in the MAUI app. We will here instead do it code. And the last thing we will do is to add this control to tab page. So we can try to run this. Works. A few seconds to build. It will work now. It worked 5 minutes before this session. Yeah, here we have the app with a native UI, and here we have the web part of it. Used some nice web components that was not available inside of WinForms. Let's take a look about, here is the component. So you can see web content using some component libraries, use components, but it's still running native on the app. I have always been against building a hybrid application, especially if you're using the regular WebView, because there are a lot of strange behaviors that can happen. Maybe there are some links to other stuff. After 2 minutes using the app, you're okay. I'm running a YouTube inside of the app because someone added a YouTube link, and I don't think it will be a good experience. But if you should do a hybrid approach, I think this is the right way to do it. Okay, similar to Electron, but if you are a .NET developer, you will probably not use Electron. But I can see there are a lot of use cases for this. For example, if you are working with building a booking app, for example, and you want to share code between both app and web, you don't want to use WebAssembly because it's slow to start up. I think this is a very good alternative because you can take your app, you can run it inside of .NET MAUI, for example, and you can create app package and deploy it to iOS App Store, Google Play. You can use those all great native stuff that a user expects from an app. If you're doing a PVA, it's hard to do application. Okay, you can do it in a web also, but we all know that we hate web specifications because they're not integrated in the operating system as we want to. It will not use the rules to some extent that we can have if it is native applications. So I think that Blazor hybrid, Blazor desktop is a really good way for sharing content between web and native apps. I think this will maybe be the future for many applications out there that needs to run on the web, but need to have a native app because the user wants that, especially for external website that you will use both as website but also as a tool, and you need to have them. You maybe are running them couple times every week. If it's something the users are using once a week, you maybe don't need a native app. But if there are an application that they will use several times a week, for example, booking rooms or communication apps. So I think this is really good. And also if you are a web developer, because there are many web developers out there that is not familiar with MVVM and SAML, and it can be, I know that it can be a little bit hard to get started with that. And just to be able to start working with Blazor, you can work fast, you can use all the web components that are out there. So I think this will be really many apps in the future that are using Blazor WebView in their apps. So if you have any questions, I'm here for answering them. Otherwise, I will say thank you for listening to this session. And you can contact me on Twitter, for example, or LinkedIn. Have questions later, or watch my streams. Thank you.